The voice of sharing. Durian ASEAN.
Good morning, good morning. Welcome and tune into Durian ASEAN on this Tuesday morning, March 11, 2014. Yes, you are right. Today you have me, your DJ, Will, just on duty in the house. Well, you may be wondering why. Where's the other voice, the lovely and cute voice that's not here today? Well, actually, she's stuck in somewhere. That's the problem with Malaysian transportation, yeah? The traffic normally during the morning is quite a heavy jam or everywhere. So if you want to go to somewhere, you better have to come up from your house earlier or you have to wake up earlier. Yep. And today, of course, we have another guest with us, and he is one director of Pusat Komas, the human rights NGO. Welcome, Jerald.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me here.
Yeah, you're welcome, because we have a discussion. We have lots of discussion about the human rights today, but we're not going to talk about that. We have to put it a little bit at the back, because the headline that we want to talk is about the MH370, because everyone's talking about this since last Saturday. Now it's moving on to the third day, right? But sadly to say that we still have to get any information or maybe the latest news about it. Well, let's maybe just roll back a little bit about what have happened about this. We have seen from newspaper, this is day 3. And just a little bit roll back. What's happened actually on last Saturday morning, 1 a.m. There are at least 2 wire reports quoting an unnamed Vietnamese official claimed there was a discovery of objects that supposedly looked like a door and tail of an aircraft found in the waters of To Chu Island, Vietnam. This is in the day 3, I'm sorry. So it means that it's this morning, yeah. But actually, it's confirmed that's not it's not a debris. So up to now, I think it's still it's a mystery. President mystery, the airplane mystery. But, well, what do you think about this case up to now? Because we still yet to have any clue about why is it missing. Even according to the military, they can't find any clue about this to explain why is it happening here.
That's, first of all, it's a sad day for Malaysia. Mm-hmm. Our heart goes out to all the victims who family members are so worried, and the whole nation is actually together with them for this disappearance of people in the plane.
Yep.
People who many of us know, and I think the tragedy is when you don't know, it's even more painful. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why this crash is prolonging the pain for a long time. And I think Malaysians are talking. I was just in the coffee shop this morning, and across the table, an auntie, uncle, 5 people were talking about aeroplane crash and what's the possibility. Everybody's talking about it, no? Mm-hmm. And I think that's to show that people are concerned, not that people are trying to make stories. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something the Malaysian government should also know, that all Malaysians are concerned.
I think the action that should be taken, they are doing it now. But the problem is now, do you think it's not efficient or it's too late? Because they just released the news, people say it's 5 hours afterwards they found it's missing.
Yeah, I think the Malaysian government and many other governments in ASEAN, all over the world, have provided so much of support. I think the spirit of the government in handling this crisis is very open and saying let's help work together and put it together. But I think at the governmental level, they're doing all they can. Planes, ships, trying to get as much information. But at the people's level, what we hear is a bit disappointing, because people are clamoring for bits of information. And so everybody's Googling to read. I read the South China Morning Post to get updates from Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. Other friends are probably doing the same to get other bits. The news may not be verified, may not be news, but I think for people who are looking to find what's happened, a little bit of information actually does not add pain. And I think the minister keeps saying that they don't want to release unverified information to not give more pain to the victims. I'm not sure whether they ask this from the victims or they themselves are deciding that they should only give verified information.
I think they are the one that decided to do so. Because as for me, if I'm just imagine if I have someone, my relative or someone that I know in the plane, of course I feel pain about this. I want to get more information, but on the other hand, if I just imagine for every 2 hours they have their news, the press conference. How can it be for every 2 hours they come up with the latest news? There should be. I mean, I'll guess that nothing happened in the 2 hours. So just imagine every 2 hours I get the disappointment.
Correct,
so what do I feel?
So I think that's what they were saying, that better they get some confirmed news to inform people. But if I was the victim, I want to be kept updated on what's the efforts.
Yes, of
so
course.
Even if it's every 2 hours, not through press conference, but I just want to know that, okay, 10 planes when they found what looked like a door, but they're unverified. If I get this information, I'm convinced that my government and all the governments are doing something. But if I have to read the internet and look at other newspapers trying to piece together, and so that for me I think is a little bit strange, and I don't and I'm wondering why the ministers and the DCA chair is a little bit defensive. Whenever questions are asked, they said we cannot give any information till it's verified. We cannot give any information. So I think that for me is more painful.
But do you think that's something to do with the involvement and interfere by the United States? Because they are coming in to help the rescue teams, but in the other hand, some people may doubt why the U.S. interfering or maybe involved in this. For
this round, I'm not looking at the normal conspiracy of the U.S. I've decided to look at all governments coming in. I mean, the U.S. citizens are also on the list, on the plane list. So every government,
just few of them.
Every government has a right to be involved.
Okay.
But I think the Malaysian government is in charge because they are the center focal. People ask them permission to come in, and they have invited help. So whichever angle, whether crash, terrorists or uncertainty, all that is the angles. But I think it is a culture in the Malaysian government to not want to give information to the people very quick and very fast. In other crises, in other countries, immediately they keep giving as much information the newspaper are reporting. But here, you have to almost beg and hope for more pieces. And now it's improving a bit more, but the first 2 days was very little direct information coming.
But do you think, is it because of, I mean, when you're referring to the culture, is it because of this culture is nurtured and by the nation itself? Because like we keep demanding on something, and we have a different culture, I mean, political cultures compared to others. We have more than 3 races here, and it's quite. Everyone knows about that. Malaysia is a racist politic. We are doing that. So the government, maybe they have the concern about if I want to release news, it might create some kind of the rumors and it's just spreading around and people feel anxious about this.
Well, that is really all politics in Malaysia, because it doesn't matter whether the government decides to release the information. People are already releasing it via SMS, blogs, Facebook, Twitter.
You see that's the problem. That's the problem. Who's the one? I mean, the group of people that released all those news. Mainly, I'm not pretty sure, but I heard from my friends, mainly from Malaysia. So the Malaysia people, I mean, the citizen is spreading the news without the confirmation of whether it's true or not.
No, it's true. It's true. But the point is that when in the absence of so little information coming out, I don't think it's wrong for people to, if they pick something, to speculate, to ask. It's a common concern. But I think the government should try to answer like what they're doing. This is true, this is not true, this is real, we've checked. That's good. Because all information at this point, when they don't have anything, can be considered a valuable input, So the culture I'm talking about is nothing to do with race relations. It's the governance culture of Malaysia, that the government controls everything, It does not see people as its partner for information sharing.
Sometimes the people, they don't believe the government. Okay, just for example, I give one example regarding the submarine. Okay, the people is just keep blaming the government about why you don't just let the submarine and our marine to go to help on the rescue. And The reason is they say, okay, I mean, from seasons, they say, okay, Malaysians got submarines cannot be used. It's
for
billion for it and it's useless.
For the search and rescue.
Yes.
I mean, I think a person of ignorance making that comment, I mean, nothing is wrong. I mean, how you and I don't know how submarines work. I've never even been inside a submarine. You know? But I know a submarine goes underwater. So in my mind, submarine should go and look for it. But it is true that the submarine is not designed for search and rescue. Something else is designed for finding torpedoes or whatever. But the thing is that when people say that, the government just has to explain and answer. That's it, you know. I
think they did it, but just that no one chose to listen to it and trust it.
No, I think the comments came out before the explanation because the Singapore submarines were around. They thought it was submarine, but actually it's the ship supporting the submarines that were used for the search and rescue. So the misreporting of the word submarine support ship, I forget the name, or the submarine, people just saw the word submarine and said, you see submarine there, what about our submarine? So, but this clarification will take away the doubts. But I think to keep, what I use the word, scolding the people for wanting to talk about it, I think it's regressive because I think information is out there. People want to talk about it. People are worried. People are uncertain. And the government feels that every information they control, and this is the background of the problem. The information is controlled, centralized, you know, within this few, and every time you see the minister says, let me verify, let me check. It's the same, all conflicts. The Sabah-Sulu conflict happened. There was no information. Blackout. Exactly. No, blackout. We don't know. We have to Google, look for bits. And other conflicts in the world happening in Africa, we are getting hourly report of who's going in, who's shooting, who's killing. Our own information is blocked. Why? Why is there a mentality that information is always the domain of government? Information should be the domain of all citizens of Malaysia. The government has a responsibility to give us as much information as fast as possible. But of course, they will always say it's a security measure. We will discuss. And I think controlling information is not really good for a nation.
Yeah, everything's sensitive.
Yes,
when you touch it, okay, exactly. You got some egg to just happen to you.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's been an issue. Yeah. Okay, maybe we just put this aside and we want to see what going to happen tomorrow, and hopefully there will be more news, and it's a good news to us coming on about this MH370. And okay, let's move on to the other news about this human rights. Okay, this is what you maybe Jerald can share with us. We have seen from Jakarta Post, what they have said about this is ASEAN human rights talk face major challenges, and of course, what kind of the major challenges that we have facing for the human rights in ASEAN?
ASEAN and human rights, this is called Durian ASEAN. So I suppose one way of uniting ASEAN is we have a common fruit, maybe durian. So there's some things that are common to ASEAN, like we are living in the same region. We are people who have similar cultural practice, similar mixed religion. And I think 500 million people is quite a big number of people for a region. So it is a power in itself. In 2007, if I'm not mistaken, the ASEAN rebranded itself, reformed itself into what is called a rules-based organization.
They have an integration.
Yeah, basically they had ASEAN before an organization, but not a rules-based. Now it's like similar to the European Union. I mean, it's rules, member signs up, and that rules-based organization is started because we now have an ASEAN charter. A charter. That means there's serious rules that every government must abide once you sign. And all 10 prime ministers and presidents signed and agreed that ASEAN now is a charter, is a rules-based organization. And that for us was, quite a miracle, because a rules-based organization means that all countries should follow. Part of these rules, if you read the charter, which is quite surprising, in that charter itself, it mentions human rights.
So human rights is one of the main concerns.
So if you read the preamble, which is normally the starting point of any charter, like the United Nations, the European Union, it has one paragraph stating adhering this is about we, the peoples of ASEAN. Then they got many paragraphs. One of the paragraphs saying adhering to the principles of democracy, the rule of law and good governance, respect for and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Which means that 10 governments and 10 head of states have signed a document and saying that this ASEAN is going to adhere to the principles of democracy, rule of law, good governance, protection and promotion of human rights and fundamental freedoms. So for us, wow, this language is in a very important document. Of course, there are other paragraphs that could be limiting of it, but I want to pick this up to show that they have publicly agreed to this as one of the principles.
But now, I have a question.
Yes.
If any one of this country that signed this and didn't do it, okay, maybe they have bleached the clause or whatever is it, okay? So what action will be taken? Nothing.
Okay, so the whole action, I mean, like at this present moment, they don't have a mechanism to check on each other, but they have meetings and summits for them to come together to agree in principle to move forward. No? So they sign, they have a declaration, a communique that comes out at the summit. Oh, we believe in this. So the best, like all international diplomatic arrangements, even like the United Nations, we all use it as a way to demand governments to adhere to what they publicly pronounce. So technically for Malaysians, we can take our Prime Minister, Datuk Seri Najib, to say that so you were in ASEAN meeting when you signed this charter, and this charter says human rights, fundamental freedom, but disappointingly in Malaysia you have forgotten many of this. So we can demand for our government to comply with what they have said publicly, you know, and also that was a preamble. But in the purpose of ASEAN, again, it says that one of the purpose number 7 or number 6, I can even read, to alleviate poverty, to narrow development gap. Number 7, to strengthen democracy. Again, good governance, the rule of law, promote, protect human rights, fundamental freedom. And then they add this language with due regard to the rights and responsibility of the member states of ASEAN. So they're trying to say that member states have rights and responsibilities that must be also seen to. Yeah.
Yes. But even though they have the rights, I mean, like they state it out. I'm still wondering how strong all this can adhere and all the countries together to bind. I mean, like, on this agreement.
So this charter actually forced the formation of the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, which is another shock for ASEAN. You know, we have a Human Rights Commission.
Yes, it is.
So it's similar, like in Malaysia we have Suhakam, but in ASEAN they have this thing called AICHR. We call it Aisha. Aisha, short from AICHR, right?
Sounds like a women's name.
Yeah. Aisha is easy to remember. Aisha. So they were forced to form this because it's under the treaty. Then they have launched the Aisha almost about 5 years ago. 4 years plus now. And for us, wow, this is good news, what we have. But I remember even Suhakam, when Suhakam was launched in Malaysia, I'm not sure, 99 or 2000, around that.
Yes.
We say, wow, we have a National Human Rights Institution. This was under Mahathir when they were so repressive. So we say, wow, now we have a Human Rights Commission, we can go. But we were very disappointed because for many years the commissioners were ex-civil service. They were not so courageous to take up human rights. Sometimes they were sort of explaining things in a very government-minded.
That's why I'm worried. Even though we have this, it's not agreement, right? It's what?
It's a body.
Body. Okay. So I think that it would be something similar to
Suhakam. Exactly. For us to understand, it's easy to say Suhakam Malaysia, Aisha at ASEAN level.
Yeah.
But the difference is, what I'm saying is that the old Suhakam is we had a lot of doubts, but the new revamped Suhakam 4 years ago, the government was forced to amend the law, the Suhakam Act, because I'm not sure whether you're familiar, but the old Suhakam was under scrutiny by an international body. You see, Suhakam is a national human rights institution, and they are subject to review by an international body called the ICC. This is called the International Coordinating Council, not the ICC that is prosecuting war criminals. It's different. So this body sort of checks the standard of any national human rights institution. So they got category A, B, or even C. A is the best, which means you comply with what is called the Paris Principles, international standard. So Malaysia started off as A, but in around, I think, 2008, it was going to fall to B. Okay. The committee wrote to the government show cause letter stating, can you give us reasons why we should not demote you to B?
Oh.
Yeah, because there's a lot of pressure from NGOs, civil society.
So what's the government?
So the government was very angry with us, saying that we have gone and maligned and said bad things. But the government changed law. Within 1 month, Nazri's ministry reformulated, amended Suhakam Act to make it a little bit more independent. So that's why they have now an independent committee to do selection. Before Prime Minister just choose, But now there's a selection committee that gives name. And after that, we got this new set of Suhakam commissioners. From 16 or 17, it became 7. But the 7 for us, civil society, did far more human rights work than the first 16 did, in the
so it did improve, right?
It did improve very much. And led by Tan Sri Hasmi Agam, he's done great work. Very courageous man who stood by human rights principles, and now he's under serious attack by many groups for speaking up the truth,
Yeah.
So this Suhakam, we are now feeling, okay, this is human rights institution. But ASEAN, I'm telling this story because to go back to Aisha, Aisha looks like it's that old Suhakam, because Aisha's setting up is flawed because the appointment of the members of the commission of Aisha is where the problem lies, because it says that...
Why do you say it's a problem?
Because you see, if you look at the... so the mandate it's got all the good language, but the commissioners who are appointed, they are appointed by the government, and they are responsible on behalf of the government, and that's where the problem is.
Okay, that's the problem. I agree.
You see, I can read you Article 5.2 of the Terms of Reference of Aisha. Each ASEAN member state shall appoint a representative to the Aisha who shall be accountable to the appointing government.
So
exactly. So that something is wrong there.
Something is wrong there already, because I think every government within the ASEAN countries, they all, I don't want to use the word selfish, but actually it's similar to that, because everyone concerned about their rights, because I want to cover, I don't want to touch about my government's things, the human rights, I take control on that. When I say A, you cannot say B. That is the human rights that I'm referring to. So, but how are we going to overcome that if we want to just make it a new rules, or how we can overcome that problem, since that problem is lies on that the government is taking the rules and taking
charge. Exactly. I think that's a good question to ask, because we are stuck with this kind of rules, and that's actually sort of molded the Aisha the last 4 years or 5 years, because the representatives are not free enough to speak, and in the 10 members, civil society feels only the Thailand rep and the Indonesian rep are representative of human rights voices, because there's an open selection process in Indonesia and Thailand. Indonesia is an NGO person. Thailand is a lecturer, a university lecturer, but also open process. You can apply, but Malaysia,
none.
No open process. I don't know whether you know who's our rep from.
No idea.
Okay, no idea. But I'm sure many Malaysians won't know the rep, but this is an important position in ASEAN, and the rep that is leading us now is none other than Shafi, Tan Sri Shafi Abdullah, the one who was prosecuting Anwar Ibrahim a few days ago. So
see, people will say, okay, why he is the representative of Malaysia, since he's prosecuting this
exactly.
on Anwar. Whatever the government did to the oppositions, they'll be considered as this is not the right things to do. They are not executing the human rights that should be.
Correct. Yeah.
Then how we?
So exactly. So this is a little bit strange. You do not expect a human rights commissioner to accept a role to be a government lawyer in a case that has elements of anti-human rights principles.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know why Human Rights Commissioner from ASEAN, Tan Sri Shafi, he's got a lot of job. He's doing very well in his private firm. There's no need for him to take up this appointment as the rep of the public prosecutor.
But he insists to do so.
Exactly. He was appointed and he took it up and he went all out. So, I mean, he's a brilliant lawyer. So,
Of course,
so the
couldn't
question
deny
is,
that.
why did he take it up, you know? Because if I'm a human rights commissioner, I will find cases to defend human rights at the highest level. But I know that...
Would it be like to him, this is also about the human rights?
Exactly.
Because the victims...
That's
right?
my question. I'm sure he's going to use that as his counter argument. But my question is that that's not your job. That's the government prosecutor's job, you know.
But he's a lawyer.
Yeah, but as a lawyer, why did you side with the government to prosecute? First of all, there are questions about the law itself. Huh?
Yes.
And of course, he says the law is in law, so we must defend. But the law has been abused. Selective prosecution, Article 377. Why is it only Anwar has been prosecuted? How many people have been charged for sodomy before? You know, very few. So why Anwar twice? First question. So the law is in question. Number two, the judicial process that it still has a lot of big question marks. So he should be finding ways to improve the judicial integrity, to find ways to make the law more in line with international human rights norms. But he decides to spend his time and energy prosecuting a political leader, which many people have, as you say, question mark, right? You know, this whole Anwar case is always a question mark. So why does he put his name to that when he's supposed to be a human rights man for all of ASEAN? So now that has put him in a very difficult position. Yeah? How can a human rights commissioner take up this kind of prosecutorial role when he's not a government person? He could have said no and kept his position more neutral and independent.
Yeah, maybe we can take a break for a while and then we come back to talk. If we got time, maybe we're going to discuss about the Anwar cases as well, since like it's also an issue that everyone's in the ASEAN that are concerned about. He's a leader in the opposition parties. So we just have a break and then we'll come back soon. Welcome back to During ASEAN. I'm Will here in the house and together with Jerald, our director from the Pusat Komas. Yeah. So previously we have talked about the human rights, and when talk about human rights, it's covered lots of the area difference, right? And okay, now we move on to Laos. Let's see what's happening to Laos now. Actually, there's a story about this. Captain Kongler. I'm not sure. I think this name is not that familiar. Lots of people never heard about this. Captain Kongler. All right. He's actually a soldier from a village who became one of Laos' most powerful leaders in the 1960s. Well, this story make me think, have come across my mind. Chin Peng. The name Chin Peng came across my mind. But it's nothing to do with with the communists. Well, I'm going to say terrorists. I'm sorry. It's a communist, okay? So, he's appeared on the Time magazine once ago. So, he got some attention in recent weeks, and not just because he died last month at age 80 in France. Rather, at the time when superpower America and ASEAN giants China and Japan were vying for clout and allies in the region, and Kongler's admirable but ultimately doomed attempt to steer Laos towards neutrality amid the all-consuming U.S.-Soviet Cold War demonstrated just how hard it is to stay on the geopolitical fence between powerful rivals. And what the news going to say here is about the neutrality, isn't it? Yeah, and do you know much about the neutrality in the ASEAN regions?
I think that's an important principle. I think we all studied that in school. The principle of Zopfan. I remember reading it somewhere.
Yes.
So it's nuclear weapon-free zone and peace. Zopfan.
And bring back the old memory.
Yeah. So this Zopfan is still it continues in the new charter, and I think the sad passing away of this gentleman, Kongler.
Kongler, Captain Kongler.
Kongler. I think many of us may not know him. I don't even know much about him. I've heard his name before.
Captain America, I know that.
But,
Different captain.
But you know, many of these political activists have lived in exile, and this poor gentleman lived in exile for 50 years, or many years, and then he's died now. So maybe in that case, it's similar to Chin Peng, living in exile and never being able to come back.
Exactly.
But the point about this man, Kongler, is that he was a man trying to find the middle ground, at least for the nation, if I read the story, to be neutral for the nation, not to be aligned to one side, the US power, or the other side, the communist power.
But first of all, what's the good thing about neutral?
I think neutrality in this sense is, you're right, because you can never really be neutral. You have to be for something.
Yes, especially when you are born in the ASEAN countries, just like a country in Laos, right? So they have so many conflicts in the country, like Myanmar and so on. So what's the good thing in become a neutral? You won't get anything, right? So you must side somewhere. It's either the ruling party or oppositions. So when you are in a neutral, nobody going to support you.
Correct. I think here when they say neutral is the whole nation, whole country supporting which alignment. This was during the Cold War period, no?
Yeah.
Whether you are the communist section or the pro-Western section. So this ZOP was a way for ASEAN at that time to not get broken up by supporting either side. So that was the logic of, let us be neutral. Don't say we are supporters of the communist bloc or the Western bloc. So they worked with both sides. And I think that was the point that of the word neutrality. But you're right, neutrality cannot mean you don't do anything. Every country has its own principle.
Agreed.
And so that principle for me is the stronger position, you know, because what's your principal position that can make you stand strong against superpowers. And this is the difficult part, because although ASEAN is a ZOPFAN region, but you know, Philippines had US military base and nuclear ships were coming there. Singapore's bases were open up for nuclear warships of America to cleaning, or I don't know what, to take a break. I think even some warships came to Port Klang for something. I don't know whether nuclear war.
Port Klang.
I mean, to stop over, you know, and but not as a base. But Singapore base and Philippines base was access to the, I'm not even sure what Thailand. But every country had different alignments. Myanmar, more recently now it's opened up, but before it was like a China base. So although Cold War is over, but the so-called new Cold War, unspoken Cold War, is the alignment with which superpower, you know? Whether the US side or the China side or the Russia side or India, all this is still happening today. And I think your point is very important. What does the nation speak about its own principles? Because economically everybody thinks of that, I must be friend with one of the big powers to get more business, you know. So like in Malaysia, one time, you know, China is good business power.
But Malaysia, I think, if we're talking about neutral, maybe Malaysia will be stand in the middle. Like we are supporting China, we are friend with the United States, we're friend with China. So we don't want to get blamed from any other countries. We want to be friend with them because we have economic issues and a business platform and business trading with China. Right.
So I think that's the reality. Most countries say they're aligned to one side, but actually they find the best way to do business with everybody. So you're right, because even countries say I'm more friendly with China because for investment and aid. You know, so Malaysia, I think, because our nation is quite prosperous, so we don't get that much aid for either side, but we do a lot of business. And I think our biggest business trading bloc is between US and China. I think the top two, I think. It's still this two is our biggest trading bloc. So Malaysia, one way of looking at it, you say neutrality means that you do business with everybody. But
I wonder the case of Chin Peng, right? How Malaysia treat Chin Peng. You see, he's a former communist in Malaysia, but some people say that he's contribute a lot to the independence of Malaysia. Some people don't agree with that. But since that Malaysia not really welcoming Chin Peng to come back to Malaysia, why the government of China they didn't voice out anything about this, and they still have a good relationship with Malaysia? So this is what I still keep wondering.
Yeah, I think there's two levels of talk. One is the ideological political talk. In Malaysia, I mean, if now you talk about Chin Peng, some right-wing Malay group will come and protest and say you don't understand anything. And UMNO will also say the same thing.
Yeah.
But the same UMNO youth, when Khairi went to China to have a formal program with the Communist Youth of China, which is a political party there. So in my mind, aren't you denouncing communism and Chin Peng just a few months ago when he died? And then one of the later months, he flew with a delegation, I think Vienna UMNO youth, to meet the Communist Youth of China party. So in my mind,
that's funny.
So politically is one talk in country, but in international relations, everybody knows this ideological talk doesn't stop trading, business, and building partnerships. So in my mind, it's better for governments to stop this political rhetoric and be more consistent and more open.
But they can't stop it. Because within the country, if they're not using it as a what you call it, the tools to manipulate people, how are they going to just become a ruling party? Is very hard.
Exactly. Maybe they should learn new ways of being government, so they don't use the old ways to manipulate. Because when you try to,
this is the most effective way to do it.
It used to be, but it's not anymore because they're struggling to win voters in the last election. I mean, if it's so effective, they would have easily won, but they didn't win easily. They won and lost the popular vote, no? 50%.
Could it be they are the other way of the winning, the tactic? They can see it. Okay, they can no longer to have to manipulate this, use this tactic to win it in a very big win, to get in a very big win. So they rather to just give out some, but they now have a very die-hard supporters at this moment. You see, the 40% of the votes can make them still become a ruling party.
That 40% votes actually is not the votes of UMNO, because it's a big part of the vote of Sabah and Sarawak. And I don't think Sabah, Sarawak and communism, you can talk to them, maybe they don't understand what you and I are talking, because they have a different history and different politics, which we fail to appreciate. So but what you are saying is correct. In Semenanjung, Malaysia, maybe this is good for their political rhetoric with the Malays in the villages, or the others to fear them, But I think it cannot hold ground if you have a public debate, know. And communism is also now linked to race-based rhetoric, because when Chin Peng was brought in, the Malay group said, oh, you don't remember how many Malays he killed. And this is not true, because there were Malay communists in Pahang. There's family members, relatives.
You just totally forget about that.
All the Malay, and they actually fought for our independence. So the communist leaders, Chinese, Malays, they were in the jungle struggling to kick out the British. But our history books don't want to recognize the Chinese, Malays, Indians, whoever were there, fighting to kick out the British who cheated Malaysians, right? After World War II, the British promised independence. Then they cheated and they came back and continued colonizing us and forced the Communist Party of Malaya into the forest. And then the fight for independence happened. But then after that, they became called a terrorist group. So we have forgotten history. And I think if Malaysia is much more mature in politics, we should be having open discussion and public debates about a real contribution of history before, so that throw away this kind of race-based ideology. Every time we talk, somebody say, hey, you don't talk, because this means you're anti the nationalist people who died. But, if you are saying all the Makcik-Pakcik now who has died recently in Malaysia, as well as in Thailand, who gave up armed struggle. Mahathir was the one that signed the armed struggle. He said, no more Communist Party Malaysia. We accept them back to be integrated into the country. So why, when you say accept and you still hit him so hard, and so it's a little bit strange, not a gentleman's agreement, really.
But that's why I said, when you come to this and when you talk about human rights and everything, this is something to do with the human rights as well. Even though you have signed on something, some agreement, some the pledge or what, but you're not really bond to it. So that's why everyone is doing their own way.
Correct. I mean, that's part of how the ASEAN wrote their own charter.
They
said, while you have Aisha as a commission, also you have your own national sovereignty. So while we want to do I think there's
no point to do that.
There's one report about the case of one of the disappearance of a lawyer, I think Sampat,
Disappearance of the lawyer.
Yeah, in Laos, I think.
Oh, the Laos.
Yeah.
Regarding the Captain Komas.
Yeah, no, not Captain Konglas. Another disappearance of another gentleman who was then the, I think, ICJ.
Yeah, what's happened to him?
They wrote to Aisha. The FIDH, I think FIDH or ICJ wrote to Aisha, said that, hey, there's this lawyer who's disappeared. Disappeared meaning probably killed, no news. You have to do something about it. And then the Philippine Aisha rep told that this should be handled by the Laos Aisha rep. And the Laos Aisha rep said, this is internal matter, you should not meddle in internal politics because these are the principles of ASEAN. So it's very funny. He's supposed to defend. He should be constant to ask what happened to this disappeared man. I will look into it. He says, no, don't meddle. This is internal matter. So what's the point of having Aisha if we cannot ask a question or try to find information on what happened?
So the poor lawyer, no one going to find him.
And he's a dissident because he's been critical of the government there and he's disappeared. So these are cases, there are many cases in all ASEAN countries, Malaysia included, Vietnam, Cambodia,
Thailand,
also the
Myanmar.
Bangkok Lake, recently many activists fighting for urban poor housing, been arrested a few times. Silence. Aisha is silence. So can we write a complaint to them? Although the article says that they have the role, Aisha has the role to get information on human rights. Exactly. So all this is, I put in inverted commas because I don't know what does that mean, but at least the least you should do is get information. Even if you don't do much more, find out information. But you see, they have one of their functions is to obtain information from ASEAN member states on the promotion and protection of human rights. If I send a letter now saying that there is a crisis in the judiciary or death in police custody, Aisha at least should write a letter to Malaysian government, say
even though you write a letter to the Malaysian government or maybe to the governments that having that issue or the crisis, right? What they can help, but just writing the letter, they doesn't help much.
In international diplomacy, like in the UN, writing a letter is quite powerful, actually.
Of course. That's a different story of the letter, right? Yeah,
because the letter then comes from an international secretariat to the government asking, we have heard there's been, example, death in custody. Is it true? What happened? So suddenly the Malaysian government has to reply. Whether it's truth or not is another question, but finally there is a little bit of scrutiny. But so some NGOs feel that even if that starts happening, it's already a first step. If Aisha can write a letter to, say, Laos and say what happened to this disappeared lawyer, or to the political detainees in Vietnam, or those arrested and detained for defending the houses, what happened to them, then at least there is something that Aisha is doing effectively. The government may not want to reply. And so a lot of their roles and functions really, they meet regularly 2 or 3 times a year. There is an ASEAN Declaration on Human Rights. I don't know what's happening with that. They do not get complaints. Like in Sohakam, if there is a human rights violation in Durian ASEAN, I can go to Sohakam and complain. Example, if you are doing something to me now. And they accept it. They will study it, they will reply. But in Aisha, I cannot go. There's no email address, no fax number to send any complaint.
How to get them without the email address, no call, no contact number? So they're appearing somewhere in the outer space.
Well, I suppose you can Google and find the Secretary General's fax email, but it's not a specific. So you can send to him, but you're not assured that you will get any reply or response. There is a department on human rights.
It's a secret department.
There is a department.
A secret department.
There is a department on human rights in ASEAN, and actually it's the staff in charge is a Malaysian woman.
Again, it's a Malaysian. I guess that's why. That's explain why.
She's not from the government. She has experience, but I think it's the system does not enable us to encourage ASEAN people to write complaints,
Exactly. So it's not so encouraging if every government or those who have signed this contract, what do you call it? You call it a charter. Okay, those who signed this charter. So if they have facing any problem on the human rights, how they can complain? Exactly. They got no way to complain.
Yeah.
See? Yeah. So as the NGO, what should the NGO play the role in promoting or maybe just pushing the Aishas to act effectively?
Okay. The NGOs have been pushing, trying to meet, trying to send letters. We have sent so many memorandums. We've even proposed what should be the changes needed to make it more effectively. Some of them accept it, some are not very happy with our criticism. But sadly enough, even Aisha, after 4 over years now, they don't even have a way of engaging with civil society formally. So now, yeah, exactly. So when you write a letter to meet them, they said, hold on, we need to discuss with all members. So if one member say, I don't think we should meet, that's it. So many times we are waiting outside the door to meet them, and
but luckily you still can find the door. Some people can't even find where the door is.
It's easy to find the door because there's a meeting, the hotel will put ASEAN meeting, but you cannot get into the door to talk to them, and that's the tragedy. If they are human rights defenders, we are human rights defenders, they should call us more often, but they are trying to keep us out. Yeah, and that's because many of the representatives of Aisha are government appointees, as we spoke earlier, so they want to find a position that will not rock the boat or criticize their government too much. So Aisha definitely needs a revamp. I think a few years ago it was called the Toothless Tiger by 100 over age ASEAN NGOs.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. But I think hopefully they will take the criticism well. And now they are in the review, it's 5 years since the Aisha, and now this year they start a process of review of Aisha as well as the ASEAN Charter. So we are supposed to have, I don't know whether they want our criticism, but many people have got a lot of constructive ways to improve Aisha. But it all depends on whether
who's the person in charge? What I mean is that, which country or which unit they're in charge? I mean, in the management level.
Every year, the ASEAN chairmanship or chairwomanship rotates according to who's hosting the summit. The leaders meeting, So this year the summit is hosted by Myanmar. So Myanmar chairs all meetings, including Aisha. Next year, Durian ASEAN should be very active because Malaysia is...
hopefully we can do that.
Because Malaysia is the chair.
The chairman.
The summit is going to be held here. The ASEAN People's Forum will be... Everything will be happening here next year. So this will be the hotbed for ASEAN next year.
I'm wondering when you say about Myanmar, right? Everyone knows about Myanmar's political issues, and sometimes it's also abusing the human rights as well. But why? A country such as Myanmar, they're still talking about the human rights and they're willing to join a charter. I wonder why.
Okay, that's a complicated question. But I think the background is Myanmar's own political development. I think in the last few years, they opened up to democracy, at least partial democracy. And so the military powers moved back a bit, and they had to decide whether to be closed or open up so that business, investment, but to open up means you have to embrace democracy, human rights. So in one sense, Myanmar opened up, and now it's really different.
How wide they open? I mean, but just
from almost negative or zero, it's opened up so much now. I mean, they have a media freedom bill. I mean, maybe you can ask our media practitioners here that I think probably is far more ahead of Malaysia, because I was in Myanmar.
So you mean far more ahead of Malaysia?
Far better.
Myanmar.
Yeah. On media freedom.
Media freedom.
Media freedom, because publications don't need permit. I was in Myanmar about 8 months ago, and first page of the English newspaper, there was a colored photograph of NLD, which is Aung San Suu Kyi's party, at some park doing a commemoration of their 50th anniversary. So I say, wow. So this is a change. You would not find that here in Malaysia.
Never.
Star, NST, Berita, all the big papers, Utusan will never put a positive news of an opposition party event.
If you want to be on the first page, you have to be negative.
Exactly.
Like Anwar Ibrahim.
Exactly. So my point is, and if Myanmar is enabling that, what's the problem with Malaysia then for not allowing that?
You make a good question, okay? But I don't know how to answer that because like we are in Malaysia and actually we are far in front, all right, far before Myanmar development. But now compared to Myanmar, our media's freedom, well, so sorry to say that we are still far behind.
Exactly. So we have to quickly update and change.
But how?
I mean, there's a lot of promises made by the government after the 2008 election for reforms.
But do you believe in that promises?
Well, some laws have been changed. They promised to take away ISA, but now they realize they want to bring it back in some other form. So I think there was a period where they realized change is really needed to...
Maybe slowly.
Yeah, to bring back the people's support. But then after this election, now they seem to have forgotten their promises made by Badawi and Najib after that last election. So that's part of Malaysia is stuck. Promised reforms and now trying to renegotiate the promised reforms in new ways, in their, even the Sedition Act, supposed to cancel Sedition Act, but they're still charging. I think Karpal is being charged today.
Yes.
Or going to be sentenced today.
Today?
So, is it today, I think, yeah? So in my mind, it doesn't make sense. You promise to take away sedition, which means you have no more political will to want to use sedition, but you're still
using it.
The police is actively investigating people for sedition. So in my mind, how come the same Attorney General who's formulating an alternative law is still using the present law to charge people with sedition? Which means that the internal mechanism of the government is not to move away to a more rights-based society, They're just finding new ways to still curtail freedom of expression.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's more about it of today's news sessions, and we're going to come back for our next session that will be talking on Sarawak's issues on indigenous and environment issues. So we will have our host back here later on. So please don't go away. Stay tuned, and we'll be back soon.